I am Reverend T. I am the unrefined priest. And today I want to talk about the surge that you are seeing in Christianity. There is a lot of movement into the faith. If you're unaware of what is taking place within Christianity right now, you're missing something, because there is a move into Christianity that we haven't seen for a very long time. In fact, what we have seen is a decline in Christianity over the last, I would say, at least 30 years, where you've got the church declining year after year after year. In fact, just 3 years ago, I was doing teachings on the decline of the church. And in those teachings, one of the things that I said was, I don't see this turning around anytime soon. And man, I was definitely wrong on that. There is a movement into the church. Charlie Kirk is going to talk a little bit about that. He's going to give you a couple reasons why he sees this taking place, and I've got a couple of my own. There's some things in here that I think Charlie Kirk either misses or just didn't have time to cover in this video, which is probably more likely. But let me turn this over to Charlie Kirk, play this, and then I'll give you my comments on the back end.
The story on Fox and Friends weekend, Gen Z and Gen Alpha are coming to Jesus in massive numbers. They don't want fluff. They don't want a watered-down gospel. They want tough, honest truth. One of the reasons I think this is happening is that young people have father hunger. Many Gen Z men especially were raised in homes without strong fathers or any dads at all. The church has a vision and has a reality of a loving yet authoritative father. This is such an important point. Father hunger is one of the reasons why, even though God the Father could be quote-unquote gendered either way, is described as a father. Because young men, if it was the heavenly mother, young men would not resonate the same way. Young men are more likely to take orders from a masculine figure. You know who taught me that? Is the great Dennis Prager. That is his point. Young men are also seeing through the woke mirage. Gen Z men, as they are super online, they want to try to find a place that is rooted in eternity, rooted towards heavenly orientation. They want to look up. Almost every generation until Gen Z has become less and less religious. And Gen Z is bucking the trend. And make no mistake, post-COVID, there's so much bad came out of COVID. But God will use something evil for good, as he beautifully says in the scriptures, Genesis 50:20.
All right. A couple things that Charlie Kirk brings out here is the idea of father hunger. I do think that does play a part in this. I would disagree with Charlie Kirk a little bit on the fact that God is described as a father, and I would say what we would want to say that's more theologically correct is that God revealed God's self as father, and because that is how God revealed himself to us, that is why we refer to God as God the Father, not simply a description. And I know that Charlie Kirk is probably just being a little bit messy with his words, but I did want to say that he's not just described as Father, he revealed himself intentionally in masculine terms as Father. But there is a hunger for fathers, for strong fathers. What I think that there's more of, though, is I honestly think that there is a real desire for something that is true, for something that is bigger than us, from something that can give us purpose and meaning. And when you're seeing Gen Z and Gen Alpha and they're walking into this world and they're looking at all that's being offered, and the world does offer a lot of tremendous things, there's nothing that gives us that purpose, that meaning, that truth that we can live unto something bigger than ourselves outside of God. And what you find is that people enter into the world searching for that and realize there's nothing there. That the world can't offer that thing. That thing can only be found in God because it was only meant to be found in God. And you're seeing a generation that's willing to pivot very, very quickly and turn and chase after that thing, because it appears as though Gen Z and Gen Alpha value that tremendously. And because they value it tremendously, they are willing to chase it no matter where it is. Another thing that I think is interesting in the growth of the church is that you are not seeing growth in the church across the board, but rather in certain segments of the church. So where are you seeing church? Where are you seeing growth? You're seeing growth in the Orthodox Church, the Greek Orthodox, the Russian Orthodox. You're also seeing growth in the Roman Catholic Church. You're also seeing growth in the Evangelical Church as well. Those three branches are really where you're seeing a lot of the growth that is taking place right now happening. Where's it not happening? Well, it's not happening in your Presbyterian churches. It's not happening in your Lutheran churches. It's not happening in the Methodist church or the Anglican church, or probably at least half of your Baptist churches. It's not happening either. And it's very clear when you can see where the growth is taking place and where it's not, why that is the case. Where the growth is taking place, those are the churches that compromise the gospel the least. That's just full stop, period. That is the end of the story. The churches that compromise the gospel over and over and over again, that's where you're not seeing the growth. Because they're not interested in a gospel that has no teeth. They're not interested in a gospel that doesn't proclaim anything. And that's what we've done in the mainline churches. We've compromised on every single issue that was of any importance. We've thrown it all out. So when Gen Z and Gen Alpha look at the church, they're not looking at those churches. Because those churches, by and large, pretty dead. Now, I know that there are some great Presbyterian churches, some great Lutheran churches, some great Anglican churches. I am an Anglican priest. Specifically an Episcopal priest, and I think we have a pretty great church here. But across the board, that is generally not the case, because the gospel's been compromised so many times. The culture said, look, we're not going to believe that. We're going to ask you to go along with this. And the church just said, okay, over and over and over again, until they had nothing to offer. Orthodox Church, Roman Catholic Church, and the Evangelical Church, by and large, I'm not saying they didn't compromise anywhere. They've made compromises, unfortunately, but they made the least amount of compromises. They've retained more of the gospel than the mainline churches, and that's why you're seeing the growth where you're seeing it take place, and you're not seeing it where you're not seeing it take place, which is in the mainline churches. Another thing that I do want to bring out about the growth that is taking place in the church, and Charlie Kirk nailed it on this, is that it is male driven. This is growth that is driven by the male in the household. And as long as I have been a Christian, I have never seen this. In all of my Christianity, it has always been the female. It has always been the wife. It has always been the mother. It has always been the female in the family that is dragging along the family. But now you are seeing that it is male driven. And what we're seeing in churches is that we are seeing single men showing up. We are seeing whole families show up. And when you sit down and you talk with them, whose idea was it to come to church? It was the husband's idea. And we're seeing this over and over and over again. We're seeing men step up in the spiritual realm and take control, and they're bringing their families back to church. Look, you can cut this any way you want. Here's how I look at it. The culture has beat the piss out of men to the point that you have driven them to church. That's how bad you have beat up men over the last 5 years, that you've driven them back to church. And that's what they're doing. And it's not just Gen Z and Gen Alpha. And that's the other thing that I really want to bring out. This is across the board. We are seeing growth in the church from the younger generations all the way up to 70s, 80s, 90-year-olds returning back to church. Yes, you're seeing a lot of this take place with Gen Z and Gen Alpha, and I do not want to diminish that at all, but I also want to make sure that people are aware this is happening across the board. Across the board, you are seeing men gather up their families and return to church, and it is an absolute beautiful thing. I am so glad that Charlie Kirk did this video on it. I think he brings up some really good points in this video. I did not play the whole thing for you, but I played what I really wanted to play. And then I just wanted to share my own thoughts on this. We are seeing this at Holy Apostles, where I am. We're seeing this at other churches as well. There is a lot of movement into the church. I'm super excited about it. If you like what we're doing, hit that like button. And if you want to be a part of the community, we're trying to build up a community here, just kind of starting out. Hit that subscribe button. We'd love to get to know you a little bit better and bring you into the community here at the Unrefined Priest. So again, my name is Reverend T. I am the Unrefined Priest, and I will catch you on the next one.